A Formula One race engineer's job used to be to collect the feedback from a driver and translate it into modifications on the car in the weeks between races. Not today. The role has evolved into one of serious complexity, with lots of different roles all in one. Today we're discussing how high-tech F1 has changed the race engineer's role, so stay tuned to find out more. First up, let's distinguish the difference between race engineers and race mechanics. To the layperson, the two terms might mean the same. Both are motorsport engineering roles, but the two jobs are very different. In the same way that you wouldn't expect a builder to be responsible for the planning and structural design of a building, an architect would probably be useless at building walls, despite understanding the basic principles of the building trade. Simply put, a race engineer deals with the setup, data, and performance of the vehicle from design and testing through to qualifying and race day, whereas the job of the race mechanic is a hands-on engineering role dealing with the moving parts of the vehicle. A race engineer will work between R&D and race mechanics and driver to engineer the best performance out of the vehicle. They'll set up testing, ensure rules are met, and analyze data from each test, qualifying session, and race to improve both the performance of the car and driver. Where a race mechanic is a highly skilled position which requires heaps of physical energy, the role of the race engineer is highly analytical, cause and effect data crunching. Race engineers are expected to multitask, as wherein most top teams, mechanics will specialize in one area of the car. You won't find a race engineer getting their hands dirty during race day. They'll be glued to a screen with their eyes on the live data feeds. Which job sounds more enticing to you? So what exactly is the role of the race engineer? The job requires an individual to not only deal with the driver aspect, but at the top of the communications chain that includes the pit wall, garage, and remote factory operations to offer analysis in real time. In short, the role encompasses, but may not be limited to, managing and optimizing all aspects of the car at all race and test events. Driver communication and performance development, briefing and coaching to get the best performance out of the car, depending on the track and conditions, tire management and strategy, legality and reliability of the car setup, run planning, coordination of other engineers and race mechanics, data analysis or all sensor gathered information to develop and improve systems and driver performance, involvement in simulations. Now, we are discussing how technology has changed the role of the race engineer, so don't go anywhere. As we know, the role of the race engineer is now incredibly complex. In simple language, a race engineer is now a driver interface fed by real-time data. Recent weather impacted races in Russia and Turkey, where race engineers and drivers had to make critical decisions on the fly, brought to the spotlight the importance of this relationship between the drivers and their pit wall. It was perfect proof of how the engineer must now act as the channel for all the extra information he's being fed, both from the driver in the car as well as strategists, weather experts, and data analysis either in the garage or back at base. Even 20 years ago, some of this information would just have not been available. The radio messages that we hear at home are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to understanding the success and failures of that driver-engineer relationship. It's far from a one-way street of the engineer taking onboard information from the driver to better adjust the car. Now, it's a constant dialogue, and his role is pretty much to be the backbone of a successful weekend during every moment of track action. So how has the role evolved exactly? The biggest evolution of this role is probably driver coaching. 15 or 20 years ago, a track engineer couldn't have provided a driver with driving advice like he's able to do today, because there was none of the real-time data available that is now. Racing has evolved exponentially. The level of analysis in real time today gives a much deeper knowledge of tires, amongst other things. We can also read many more real-time parameters, and there are more sensors on the cars. This allows them to analyze the data they receive from the car in real time and obtain information, which is then passed on to the cockpit, making it easier to make adjustments quickly. The expansion of F1 teams and this positioning of the race engineer as a funnel for all the information being fed to the driver from a range of outside parties means communication lines are key. Mess anything up in this process and let a piece of bad information slip into the system, that could spell the difference between a potential brilliant result and a catastrophic failure. The increased complications of the expanded role means that training on communication skills is a must, as is constant analysis of performance. Do you think you'd excel in this sort of role? Let us know below. And how about the relationship between the driver and engineer? Important, right? There is one relationship that needs to be tuned tuned to the complete preference of one individual, and that is what a driver wants to hear during the race. Each track engineer crucially develops his own approach to dealing with a role, trying to manage the flow of information with the character in the cockpit. There are drivers who want to be motivated, others who prefer to be left alone. Listening into the radios on a Sunday afternoon gives the audience a great idea of these relationships. There are drivers who constantly ask for lap times, and that information helps serve as a reference point or a bit of extra motivation. There are others who prefer a more silent approach, with communications reduced to a minimum. The relationship between the engineer and the driver is fundamental on this front, and it is necessary to understand the correct approach to provide the driver with the best conditions. The way of communicating, as well as the tone of language, needs to be understood in context. Sometimes a dialogue that seems more exciting is aimed at the personality of the driver and delivering what he needs to perform in the best way. At the end of the day, it is a team, and with any great team, communication is key. The longer the team works together, the more chance they have of success, right? You think about this role, and which team do you think is the best at this? Next up, we preview this weekend's race in Austin, so stay with us. So who do we think takes pole? Well, incredibly, never in the turbo hybrid era has a Mercedes not been on pole position at the Circuit of the Americas, a record stretching from 2014 to the last time we raced here in 2019. That stat will worry Red Bull, as will their fears that Mercedes' power unit has moved on in the last few races. Straight line speed is definitely going to be a factor in Austin, given the circuit's over 1 kilometer straight, while Max Verstappen now hasn't been fastest in a conventional format qualifying session, including Friday qualifying in Italy since the Dutch Grand Prix, worryingly. But downforce-wise, teams opt towards the higher end of the scale in Austin due to the number of slow corners on the track and the Suzuka-like S-bends, a factor which should play to Red Bull and the RB16B's strengths. Verstappen's chief title rival, Lewis Hamilton, is statistically the king of COTA poles, with 3 out of the 8 here to his name, although it was Valtteri Bottas who was the last driver on pole here in 2019. As Hamilton endured what he called one of his worst qualifying sessions to take 5th on the grid. Oops, who do you see taking pole on Sunday? Let us know below. So what does Hamilton's main rival Verstappen think about his chances this weekend? Verstappen has finished 4th, 3rd, and even 2nd at the Circuit of the Americas in the past, but the Dutchman is targeting nothing less than his first United States Grand Prix victory this weekend, when he faces off against the title rival Lewis Hamilton, with 6 races remaining in 2021. As we mentioned, Hamilton is statistically the dominant driver at COTA, but it's a circuit where Verstappen has always performed well too, taking 4th with Toro Rosso in 2015, while 2018 saw him hold off Hamilton to claim 2nd place behind Kimi Raikkonen. And Verstappen, who sits 6 points clear of Hamilton in the driver's standings, said it was exciting to be heading back on the track with a realistic chance of victory this weekend. We've always been competitive in the US and have got close to some good results, he said. So it's about converting that into a win now. We go to every track now knowing that we can fight at least for a podium, but also a win, and it's different to past years. We are focused on doing the best we can and always trying to win the race, and that will be no different in Austin. It'll be another close battle this weekend, and I'm looking forward to that. How do you see the return to Austin playing out? Let us know. As always, let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below, and remember to tune in next time. Thanks, guys.